Cross-site scripting is a web application vulnerability that permits an attacker to inject code, typically HTML or JavaScript, into the content of an outside website. When a victim views an infected page on this website, the injected code will automatically execute on the victim's browser. Thus, the attacker will be able to steal private information from the victim associated with the website. So here the point is that the victim trusts the web application, which is a legitimate web application, but it's a vulnerable one, and the attacker will inject this malicious code in order to exploit this trust. We have two types, or mainly two types of cross-site scripting: reflected, which is known to be non-persistent, and stored, which is known to be persistent. The reflected one actually occurs when a malicious script is reflected off a web application to the victim's browser. So the person here, or the vulnerability actually takes place on the web browser and not on the application itself. The application is only vulnerable. The script is activated through a link which sends a request to a website with a vulnerability that enables the execution of a malicious script. The vulnerability is typically a result of incoming requests not being sufficiently sanitized by the website, which allows for the manipulation of web applications functions and the activation of a malicious script. So here the issue is in the vulnerability of the website, which allows an attacker to exploit this in order to execute external scripts on the victim's browser. To distribute the malicious link, the perpetrator typically embeds it into an email or a third-party website, such as comments on some of the social media sections. The link is embedded inside an anchor text that provokes the user to click on it. Once the click happens, the attack is executed, or we call it reflects off to the user. The second type is the stored attack or stored cross-site scripting. It's known to be persistent, and it is more damaging than the reflected one because it occurs when a malicious script is injected permanently into a vulnerable web application. This injection takes place when there is a place to write, when there is a place for user input, such as wikis or such as comments in the discussion forums. The impact of cross-site scripting is moderate for the reflected one, but severe for the stored type. In Kali, we have many automated tools that can help us find cross-site scripting problems automatically in our web applications. Let's take an example here for a reflected XSS attack. First, the attacker will send an evil email to the victim after identifying that this domain is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. So this is a legitimate domain, but he attached a JavaScript file to it using this link. The victim receives this link through email, and once he presses on the link, the vulnerable bank application takes the data and includes it in a valid web page. Now the victim browser trusts the script from this domain, and the attacker has full access to the victim's account. The next type of attack is the stored one, where the perpetrator discovers a website that has a vulnerability and will inject the script directly into the website or into the database through the front end. Next, the perpetrator injects, as we said, the script directly. Now, for each visit to the website, the malicious script is activated automatically, maybe on load, and the attacker will have access to the session cookies of the visitor. Now, how to protect ourselves from these types of attacks? The most important thing is to use frameworks that automatically escape the cross-site scripting by design, such as using the latest .NET framework, the latest Ruby on Rails, the latest React.js, etc. It is also recommended to filter and sanitize input as much as possible. It is also recommended to filter output or encode output in order to escape the characters that might be used for cross-site scripting by using base64 encoding, for example. And it's advisable to enable the content security policy, which is a defense in depth mitigating control against cross-site scripting.